Welcome to Life, Love, and Good Stuff. Father and daughter chats with David and Sophie McCallum. Here we discuss seeing and living life through the lens of self-love, how family relationships and life experiences hinder or fuel an authentic, rewarding life. A life filled with conscious, compassionate self-love. And sometimes we just have a good chat. Actor David McCallum has appeared in theater, film, and television and is a critically acclaimed author. David's most enduring roles include the Russian agent Ilya Kuryakin in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and Dr. Donald Ducky Mallard on the CBS hit NCIS. Sophie McCallum was born in New York City where she lives today. Sophie's a certified life coach but specializes in self-love coaching as the self-love peddler. Sophie is an energy leadership master practitioner and strives to start each day with love in her heart for herself and the world around her. You want to kick it off?
Yes. Well, I think it's a wonderful idea when every young man, when they've sort of finished school and they go out and they've got that, finished college, whatever, and they get conscripted into the army for a year like the Israelis do it. And back when I was growing up, I did it. It was 2 years. You had to do your national service.
How old were you?
It was called. I'm not quite sure, but I think 17, 18, 19. So I go into somewhere in the west of London and take all my clothes off except my shorts and stand in line, and the doctor looks at you and says, "You're fine, move on." And then you report outside and you got your clothes back on, of course. And you get in a bus and they take you somewhere. And in my case, I was driven up into the Welsh, to Chester, in the Welsh mountains. It seemed that everybody I was late going in for some reason or other, maybe in my age group or something, but I ended up being put in for my basic training into the TECAC RA, Royal Artillery, picture up there. And I became someone firing 25-pounder field howitzers, which are big guns. And I had a wonderful time. And for instance, at one point when we were out on the range, they said they're bringing a new mortar to test out, and the brass are all coming, generals and things with omelets on their shoulder. And anyway, they all arrived and this great, I was detailed with 3 other guys to fire this thing into the mountains up there. And they're all standing there with their sticks and everything, like gloves. And so we took this big shell, because it was a big mortar. But the mortar, you drop it in, and the weight of the thing, on the back end of the thing is a firing pin. And when that hits the bottom of the thing, the mortar goes off and away you go. You have mortars this big that you hold in your hand, but this was the big mother. Anyway, I dropped, I just said, "Okay, whoever it is, put it in." So he got a hold of it and dropped it in, and it went down and it went, literally, it was like a sort of popping noise.
Like a circus noise.
Instead of going shoo into the mountain, it came out like, wasn't going to go very far. Now, it was probably armed, so everybody knew there was going to be one of the biggest explosions, not that far off, very soon. And we all sort of stood there watching it, because it's going to be far enough away. But all these people with stuff on their shoulders and caps and the whole thing, they literally tried to dig their way into the ground. So they were all digging holes.
They knew what was coming.
To get away. And we were standing there laughing so hard. This thing hit the ground. It went off with a huge bang, dust going everywhere.
So it did go off.
It was off. And then another time I had 4 field guns. And we were the last gun of the 4. And you stand up in the turret, so you're up here, the driver's down there, the gun. There's a big thing full of ammunition, and behind that is the gun. And the driver said, "Excuse me, sir," banging my leg. I said, "What's the matter?" He said, "It feels awful light." I said, "What does?" He said, "This, it's all light. It's not the same. Some, you know." So I turned around, the gun had gone.
Fallen off.
So I stop. Now, what the rule is, everybody's watching the car behind, and if it stops, you all stop. And they all stop. Anyway, the man in charge, we were all going off to the range to fire these guns. He comes back to me. He said, "What's the matter?" I said, "We've lost the gun." So we're talking about healing comedies. He said, "Well, we better go find it, hadn't we?" So they moved all the shells and everything, and the other guns to the side of the road, and everybody else went back down looking to find out where this gun was. We're in the Welsh mountains, and then we found this huge hole in the hedge, which I can see to this day. And there were 2 tracks down, and there was a canal or a river, sort of.
Oh no!
And the back of the gun was just sticking up out of the river like this. And he was wonderful. His son, Ghost was his name, and he took charge, and he said, "Right, you take every single ammunition thing, take it up to the range, take 1 gun with you, and fire all the shells off. And make absolutely sure you fire 1 round through each of the guns. Every gun has to look as if it's been fired. And we have to get rid of all the ammunition. I don't want to hide it somewhere or bury it. We're going to use it. The rest of you were all going to get this gun out." And he took the other 2 quads, as they're called, and tied it around a tree, and we hauled this gun out, all covered in leaves and mud and roots, old tin cans and empty bicycles, whatever. And he made everybody clean that gun. Everybody, doesn't matter what you do, drop everything, grab a rag or grab something and clean it.
How many of you?
Oh, well, there's like 4 or 5 to each gun. So 4 guns, but 25 all told. And we got it all out. And then he said, "Take it up to the range, fire 1 round through it, bring it back." So even that gun had a dirty barrel. Mm-hmm. And then we all got it, went back. But I said, "That could have been me." He said, "Yeah, if we hadn't found it, you'd have to pay for it. You'd be in the army a long time."
What a wonderful experience. I always thought in this country it would be incredible if you had 2 years of mandatory service. It couldn't be military. Vietnam ruined that idea. The country wouldn't go for it, but 2 years.
Corps, yeah.
Well, Peace Corps takes the resources out of our country. The idea of every young person doing 2 years of service for our country in some form is a wonderful idea to me. And I did see a difference in Italy. So I was married to an Italian for 12 years. The difference in the country over there when they did away with the mandatory service. There was a big change.
Let me ask you, have you felt as if you have never lived up to your true potential? Do you hear a voice inside telling you that you're destined for more? Are you craving to love yourself more and live a fuller life? Welcome. My name is Sophie, and I'm your personal self-love peddler. I've created a program that allows you to forge into your most authentic life by guiding you on how to fully self-love. When we love ourselves and hold the space needed to learn about ourselves, our internal voice becomes crystal clear. When we start to listen to that voice, we begin to start living the life of our dreams. The path to getting there is paved with self-love. If you're a woman who does not stop to tune into self-care, to listen to yourself, if you ignore all the red flags and all the signs telling you that you are worth more, then you are exactly who this program is meant for. With the Flourish and Fly Learning How to Self-Love program, you will finally find the answers you have been seeking inside of yourself. We know children and even plants grow and learn best when surrounded by love, compassion, and encouragement. Guess what? So do grown-ass women. The women who work with me learn to nurture their true selves by turning their love inward, to grow and learn, to flourish and fly. If you're struggling with self-love and are nodding your head, yes, please click the link below and join me inside of this program. I cannot wait to guide you to flourish and fly with love.
Well,
Especially today where they're all doing this and videotaping themselves and their world is here.
right.
To do something that makes them aware of what's out there and not just what they encounter, but what they're forced to encounter, I think would be phenomenal.
They didn't let me stay in England and we go to the British because I got called in one day and they said, we've been watching all your math lessons. You keep hitting your own troops with the shells. I don't think that artillery is...
It's your thing?
I don't think it's your thing. So we're putting you in infantry. Now, by the time I went to... and then I went to, officers training school. I became a lieutenant, a second lieutenant, and all with a pip. Once that happened, you get a posting, and all the postings were over, so the only one left was Africa.
Where?
Dead Man's Gulf, in what was then the Gold Coast, in Accra. Mm. And I went into Tottenham Court Road underground station, which I'm sure you've been in many times. There is a labyrinth of miles and miles and miles of tunnels beneath that station, and they're all laid out for troops to. You can put a whole regiment back down there, the beds, everything. Back then, and I was the only one there. It's a little lonely. Anyway, the next day I came out, but I didn't know it was there. Every time I go by, I know that whole complex is down there.
You never told me that. That's amazing.
And then I was driven out to an airport north of London, forget the name of it, and I flew to Gibraltar. I've been to all kits. You go and get all your uniforms made and all this. I spend the money in it. Anyway, we then flew to Gibraltar, and from Gibraltar to Gao and Auluf, which are two little tiny strips in the middle of the Sahara Desert. Nothing but a guy with a pump to pump the gas and oil drums. I mean, there's nothing. And at one point, I walked away from the plane, and when I turned around and walked back, it wasn't there because I lost my bearings.
Yes,
because there's nothing. It's just sand.
I was going to say, what nothing? Sand.
And then I finally looked
sky.
for the highest hill I could find, and I ran up to the top of it, and you could just see the tip of the, the tail of the plane. It was a
Note to self: don't wander from airplane in desert.
It wasn't a jet on it. It was just a fut-fut. Anyway, we flew, arrived at Accra, and was driven out to cantonments and met Major Majindi and everybody. And I spent 18 months there. I worked on the radio station because I met the guy that ran the radio station. He taught me to drive a car, which is the first time I ever drove. And then what really... most significant thing that happened to me were two. One of the other officers and I were fooling around and running around, chasing each other through the things, I don't know, flicking each other with towels and things, getting out of the shower. Anyway, he went through a door, and I went through a door, and I swung the door back. He went to grab the door, and it was glass, and it went right through and sheared this off. And the artery here hit the ceiling, the blood pressure. And there was a whole hoo-ha about that, and everybody said, well, what were you doing? I said, well, we were sort of fooling about. He said, well, what am I going to put in the report? I said, well, fooling about, because that's what it was. We're just having a good time. I suppose there was some question about, homosexuality, but it never crossed my mind. No, it is, right. Today. Anyway, at the end of almost when I had about 6 months left, there was the officer who took care of the band, the food, the bar, all the bedding and stuff and all that, clothing, and shopping at the market and everything.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
And everybody hated those jobs. And so they got a hold of me and said, I got a hold of me and said to me, why don't you do them all? So I went to the CEO and said, why don't you let me do all of those things and let me run the mess? And none of the other guys need to have anything to do with it. He said, that's a wonderful idea, because he'd been having so many complaints. And I became sort of a messing officer of the regiment. And it was raised up, had bougainvillea all the way around it, interlaced with night-flowering jasmine.
Oh, the smell.
And 2 cannons that were used to fire oranges across the road and break the windows of the medics across the road. But
I think that job may be why you're the most fastidious, do not leave your clothes on the floor husband I've ever seen.
Well, you have to, it was an early morning start because you go to market. No, not every day, but I would go to market, see what everybody was spending the money on, bring the food back, do the menus. The curry side dishes, there were like 30 side dishes to the curry on Sunday. It was a big,
what were they?
Special day. Well, raw onion, cooked onion, blackened onion, that's 3 right there.
Mm-hmm.
Pawpaw, mango, you just name it, dates, raisins, I mean, everything. And so you had your curry, and then you had all this little bit of coconut in.
Have you ever found a place in New York that can do all of these things?
No, and I've never actually
Have you looked?
I've never found a list of what it was. I remember the tomatoes and fried tomatoes and blackened tomato. But it was a wonderful and spread. And they had a special thing, where it was all laid out and all go in a truck down to the beach. So you were on the beach swimming, and that was lunch, came down from the mess with Lieutenant McCallum in charge. But then there was one officer who was always drunk on sherry, sweet sherry. We finally had to put him on a plane and send him back to England because they kicked him out, I suppose. And at one point, Jehovah arrived on a plane from somewhere, the head of Jehovah's Witnesses, and the British government decided that the rally he was going to have in Accra was not acceptable. And so we were detailed to go down and put Jehovah back on the plane, send him back to England.
Better than the missionary pot.
No, the missionary pot, yeah. But it was a wonderful, wonderful experience, both in the kitchen and everywhere else. And, when the entire regiment was lined up for the Queen's birthday parade, that's a lot of guys in a big long line. And everybody marches forward exactly like this to the bum, 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 everything stops. Anyway, the entire regiment went forward, and by that time your sword is here and at your side, and you present arms, and then you start marching. My sword stuck in the ground. So the entire regiment went like this, and way back there, in the middle of the parade ground, there's this one sword stuck in the ground, waggling like this. And I'm still walking like this with nothing there. Again, Ealing comedies. I mean, and the CEO called me in and said, "What's the matter? Lost of grip, have you, Callum?" Yeah. And so I did a lot of extra orderly officers. And then another time was when it was a dance and everything was beautiful, and there was a scream from the ladies' toilets. And so I was running the mess at that point. And so we rushed out to see her, and she came out and said, "I've been bitten." So she sat, the thunderboxes, the toilets were a thing.
Is the thunderbox what the toilet was called?
Yeah.
I am never calling it a toilet again. That is the greatest name ever. Why aren't they all called thunderboxes?
Piece of burlap, hessian at the back, right? And you would reach in and pull the bucket out and take it out empty and put a clean bucket back in there. And the sea went up.
Was that also your job?
Bucket. No. But anyway, she sat down and got bitten by a snake. So she screamed. And
she
so
okay?
the medics were there. So the chief medical officer said, bring her up onto the billiard table, clear the billiard room. And I need hot water, and he rang the thing, and he had a kit, and he cut, and he sucked, literally sucked the poison out. This is what you do. And spat it into a bucket. And I was detailed to go kill the snake. Now, there's some pretty nasty snakes.
In
Puff
Africa,
animals
yeah.
about this big, they will kill you in 3 seconds. We didn't know what it was, but if it was in that bucket, it was not very big. So we went down and we got a gun from the armory, just in case. And we went down. I had one guy with a hook who was going to pull the bucket out, another guy with the gun. I just kept back. And we yanked this out, and he went to fire it. And there was this chicken inside going,
Was she bitten by a chicken?
She was bitten by a chicken. And I said, if any of you breathe a word of this to anybody,
Wouldn't the medic have been able to tell the difference between a snake bite and a chicken bite?
I mean, it was a puncture wound. That's all it was, just a little puncture. I mean...
Did you let it go?
Oh, God, that was so funny.
Did you let it go?
And then another time, what?
Did you let it go?
Well, the chicken?
Yes.
No, they probably ate it. But it was
probably covered in shit.
Excuse the language. There was another time when we had the General Sarashma Whistler, the governor of West Africa, was at dinner. Now, the mess table was probably as long as, 20, 30 feet. And what we did was chairs all the way around. President of the Mess Council, and I was at the other end as the chief medical messing officer, or whatever it was.
Messing, not medical.
Messing.
Medical came later.
And the governor's halfway up in the middle there. And we took the regimental silver, highly polished, and put it all the way down the table, and it was masses of silver. And then they went out and plucked the bougainvillea and just wrote the bougainvillea, so the silver was all coming out of these bougainvillea. I mean, it's divine.
I love.
Sergeant Agana Grunshire says, we have problems. I said, yes, Sergeant Grunshire, what's the matter? He said, we no find corkscrew. I said, what do you mean? He said, we cannot open the wine. So I said, oh, really? So I looked at imagined way up the other end, and I said, can't find the corkscrew.
Push it in.
Push them in. So I said, he said, I saw some. I go push them in. So off he goes. So now the governor has to taste the wine, right? So he comes back with a bottle, no cork. It's in the bottle.
Right.
And he tipped it towards the governor like that, and nothing happened.
I know what's happening.
And then he put it back and looked again. So he tried again in the glass, and nothing happened. So now he's really looking, and he sees it, and he gave it a little shake. He turned it. Anyway, he turned it in such a way that the wine all went down the white dicky of the governor. And it was that point I went over to the governor. I got up, which is not considered proper. You stay at the table no matter what. But I went and I explained to him, and he said, not to worry, The healing comedy.
The personalities, too.
Yeah. And then finally I got on the plane and I flew to London. And then I was given a ticket to the Royal Staffordshire Regiment. The South Staffordshire Regiment, I mean. So I went up to the South Staffordshire Regiment, and I went up this stairs and into this little tiny office, and there's this captain sitting behind the desk. Yes, what do you want? So Lieutenant McCallum said, reporting for duty, and he said, wait a minute, what are you talking about? I said, I'm reporting. I came and told to report to you. He said, well, I don't know anything about it. Go home. We'll call you if we need you. So I went home. So now I have like 4 or 5 weeks of my 2 years that you're supposed to do. I was at home. At the end of that time, there's a knock on the door. I open it, and there are two policemen, with the red MP and armbands and everything. Lieutenant McCallum, yeah. We have a warrant here for your arrest. I said, what for? He said, you're AWOL. I said, how can I be AWOL? He said, well, you were supposed to report to the South Staffordshire Regiment for the last 3 weeks, and there's no record of you having ever done it. I said, well, I went there. He said, well, we don't know that you went there. As far as we're concerned, you're AWOL, and you have to come with us. He said, can you hold on just a second? And I went upstairs to my room, and I brought the travel voucher down. It had stamped and a ticket showing that I travelled to South Staffs on the day that I was supposed to report. I said, that's evidence showing I went there. And when I went there, they told me to come home. And his name was, and I gave him the name of the captain. He said, sorry, sir.
You're good.
And
to this day, you keep meticulous records. Now I know why.
Well, no, that's just a habit. But, all of a sudden I'm out of the army, then I'm back in the army briefly, and that was it. And when I came home, none of my clothes fit. I was so upset and so sad and miserable.
Too big, too small?
Cried in my room. No, nothing fit. And there was one lady.
Why did nothing fit? What had changed?
Oh, I was, my squad won the assault course. We held the record of the assault course.
So you were muscular.
Oh, yeah. I was like
you were a man.
Tiger.
Yeah.
But like Ian, the way he is, not that tall, but
My son.
Your son, you just get very, very fit in that regime because you have to. And you are at that age anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a job that Hazel Vincent Wallace, who ran the the Leatherhead Theatre, she said, don't worry, when you come out of the army, we'll have a really nice job for you. So I knew I had that. So when I finally got some clothes that fitted me, I got on the train, went down to Leatherhead, went to Ventnor. She said, oh God, thank God you're here. We need somebody to install a new switchboard, and I know you can do that. And we have to build a set, and we have to do this, and the lights need hanging, and we need a whole stage director. We'd like you to do it.
And that will be what we discuss next.
And that was wonderful. But then what she said blew me away.
What'd she say?
I thought you said we're doing that next.
Oh, I love it. A cliffhanger. Hi, this is Sophie McCallum, and I just wanted to take a minute to thank all of the absolutely exceptional fans of my father's who have been listening to my podcast. I am the Self-Love Peddler. You can find me at selflovepeddler.com. And I work with women, as you know from listening to my podcast, to help them uncover love for themselves so that they can truly get to know themselves, so that they can have these lives that flourish into their wildest dreams. So I didn't originally set out to do a podcast with my dad. I did a podcast with a lot of different people, but the podcast that I did with him, that one episode just resonated with me so much. I just had to keep going. I am so very, very, very blessed to have him in my life and to have my mother in my life. Every day that they are here with me, I know is a gift. And they have really helped me uncover my passion, which is, as I said, helping women uncover their passions. So if you or any loved ones that you know might be interested in working with me, I just launched an amazing course called Flourish and Fly, which is the basics to self-love. It's a super effective, fun, and efficient course that I really enjoyed making. And even when I watched it to make sure everything was in order, I got so much out of it as a viewer. So that was really rewarding to create something and then to profit from it in my proof watching, if you will. I work with women of all ages. You may have granddaughters who you see on social media all the time or on their devices all the time. I know that can be really scary for those of us who don't really know what's going on there. It's a tough time to be a young woman growing up. All women are told that the future is female and that they hold all the cards, yet at the same time they have food, fashion, and diet industries telling them that they're not good enough and that they need to change to be worthy. So it's a tough time. There's a lot of dialogue coming at women from different directions, women of all ages. So just going to
promote what I'm offering to the community in case there's a woman in your community, or if you yourself would be interested in checking out my course. I'm really extremely proud of it. Flourish and Fly. It's my calling, getting these things out there. And I really appreciate your help and your encouragement and your support. And for all you male Man from Uncle fans out there, I don't mean to exclude you. Thank you as well. It's a real joy sharing this connection I have with my dad with you. Every time I sit down with him, I learn so much. And sometimes I hear stories that I've heard over and over and over again, and I don't mind it for a minute. And I love that even though I've heard a lot of these stories before, you guys haven't. So it's a real gift to share this. And what's been really fun too is as we go through this process, at first I would come to our recordings with a list of things to discuss. And now when I see my dad, which is very often, we're quite close, he says things like, so I was thinking this would be a good topic, or that would be a good topic. And he's starting to think about this format and this forum that we have together. And he's so sweet. He's always learning, right? And always growing and always trying new things. As many of you know, he's writing his second book right now, and he's all in. And he's also still working full time and flying out to California to work. But he's started to bring topics to the table for us to discuss, such as energy, and that's never been like his forte, his playground, if you will. And it's not that he's taking my lead, it's that he is finding a way to be interested in what interests me. And he knows that through that, he will grow. And we can all learn a lot from him. He's really a special human being. And it's such a pleasure and such a treat for me to be doing this podcast. I hope we do many, 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 many more. And again, this is just a little interruption to say thank you, to plug my job, because I feel so strongly that what I do is providing a service that can help so many, and it brings me so much joy to share it with you. And I'm so glad that I have brought you joy sharing some more of my dad with you. And let's just keep it all going. So thank you. And more to come, I promise. Keep on listening and keep on being your awesome selves. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for spending time with us today. Please hit the subscribe button so you're notified each time a Life, Love, and Good Stuff Father and Daughter Chats with David and Sophie McCallum podcast drops. Until next time, remember to lead with love.